Welcome back to the channel. There's a certain moment you feel, right before stepping into a mystery, that quiet pause when your mind tries to catch up with something that does not quite fit into the world you thought you understood. Today, I want to invite you into that feeling. Because scattered across deserts, hidden in jungles, perched on windswept cliffs, and even buried beneath the ocean, there are colossal stone structures that defy simple explanations. And once you see them, really see them, you will realize our history may be far more layered, far more complex, and far more astonishing than the textbooks suggest. So, settle in, breathe, and let the outside noise fade. We are about to travel across continents to explore the most mysterious megalithic sites ever built, not by modern machines, not by the civilizations we usually celebrate, but by hands we still can't fully identify. These places share something uncanny, blocks of stone weighing hundreds of tons, fitted together with precision that seems almost engineered. Walls assembled from shapes so irregular yet perfectly interlocked that even a strand of hair can't slip between them. And in many of these locations, there is no written record, no clear cultural origin, and no surviving explanation for how such work was achieved. Imagine standing before a stone as heavy as a large passenger jet, perfectly balanced on a single point, or walking alongside a wall whose enormous blocks were transported from quarries miles away through valleys, up slopes, and across challenging landscapes. These were not random accidents of nature or casual construction projects. They were intentional, sophisticated, and deeply meaningful to their builders. Yet the most striking detail is not the size of the stones or the difficulty of the engineering. It is the silence that surrounds them. The absence of names, plans, records, or even consistent myths about the people who created them. It is as if entire chapters of human history have been erased, leaving behind only these massive clues carved in rock. And that is where our journey begins, with the possibility that these megalithic giants are remnants of a forgotten era, a time when human knowledge, creativity, and ambition reached heights we are only now beginning to rediscover. Today, we will explore these structures, the mysteries behind them, and the questions they raise about who we once were, and what we might have lost along the way. One of the most puzzling things about these megalithic structures is not their size, their shape, or even their engineering. It is the silence surrounding their creators. Across the globe, we find monuments so advanced that they should have left behind detailed accounts, tools, planning documents, or at least cultural continuity. Instead, what we discover is disappearance. Entire building traditions, with no clear beginning and no clear end. When we look at these ancient sites, we expect to find clues that reveal who designed them. We expect pottery, inscriptions, symbols, or even everyday objects that connect the stones to the people who shaped them. But in many cases, nothing like that exists. A massive wall stands beneath a mountain ridge, yet the identity of its builders is lost. A carved stone platform rests beside a valley, but the language spoken by its creators is gone. Underground chambers large enough to hold hundreds of people echo with perfect acoustics, but no written record mentions their construction. And that absence is powerful. Imagine this: a structure so significant that it required careful planning, countless hours of work, coordinated teams, and an understanding of engineering that rivals modern methods. Yet not a single surviving chronicle tells us who accomplished it. It is as if these builders rose suddenly with extraordinary knowledge, completed their monumental projects, and then faded from history before leaving any trace of themselves behind. In archaeology, gaps like these spark debate. Some researchers argue these were simply forgotten societies whose records did not survive. Others suggest natural disasters or cultural collapse erased those histories before they could be written down. And then there is the more provocative possibility that some of these structures come from an era older than our known civilizations, built by cultures that existed and vanished long before the ones we commonly study. What makes this mystery even more compelling is the global pattern. This is not one isolated case. The same missing origin phenomenon repeats in Japan, Peru, the Middle East, China, Ireland, and even remote islands in the Pacific. Advanced stonework appears suddenly, then stops abruptly, as if the knowledge itself was lost or intentionally abandoned. We are left standing before these incredible structures with only questions. Who were these builders? Why did their methods disappear? And what happened to the societies capable of such remarkable achievements? If the mystery of the missing builders raises questions, the craftsmanship they left behind raises even more. One of the most extraordinary things about these ancient megaliths is the level of precision visible in every block, every angle, every joint. These were not rough stone piles thrown together for shelter. They were deliberate creations, showcasing a level of detail and symmetry that would challenge even modern engineers. Walk up to some of these walls and run your hand across the stone. You will find surfaces so smooth they reflect sunlight, edges so sharply cut they appear almost machined. Multi-ton blocks shaped into irregular polygons fit together like pieces of a puzzle, not with mortar, but with such flawless contact that even a blade of grass cannot slip between them. The stones bend around corners. They curve to match the terrain. Some have up to 12 or more angles, each one interlocking perfectly with its neighbors. And these were not lightweight materials. We are talking about blocks weighing anywhere from 20 tons to over 800 tons, the weight of entire houses or commercial airplanes carved and moved with a mastery that defies easy explanation. Consider the underground structures carved directly into bedrock. Huge chambers supported by pillars left intentionally during excavation. Ceilings with uniform parallel grooves. Walls displaying symmetrical patterns that imply planning, geometry, and specialized knowledge. These elements are not random artistic touches. They are evidence of a system, a method, a blueprint that has somehow disappeared from history. Even erosion patterns can be revealing. In some locations, the stones show signs of wear, consistent with significant water exposure, suggesting they endured floods or long periods of environmental change. Yet the precision remains intact, as if the builders designed these structures to withstand centuries of weathering. This kind of craftsmanship requires more than brute strength. It requires mathematics. It requires design. It requires intentionality on a scale that contradicts the idea of primitive societies crudely shaping rock with simple tools. So here's the real question. If these structures reflect a high level of engineering skill, why do not we find a gradual evolution of techniques leading up to them? Why do they appear suddenly at full maturity, as if emerging from a tradition that began long before recorded history? The stones do not just tell us that ancient people were skilled, they tell us these builders understood something we have yet to fully rediscover. If the precision of the stones is impressive, the precision of their placement is even more astonishing. Many of these ancient structures are not just architectural masterpieces, they are celestial instruments, built long before telescopes, satellites, or star-tracking software. These monuments align with astronomical events in ways that reveal remarkably sophisticated observation skills. Across continents, ancient builders aligned doorways, corridors, standing stones, and even entire landscapes to the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. These were not accidental alignments or lucky guesses. They were deliberate, repeated, and mathematically exact. Take Newgrange in Ireland. more than 5,000 years old. It contains a narrow passage that remains pitch black throughout the year, except for a few minutes during the winter solstice. On that day, sunlight enters through a specially designed opening above the doorway and travels down the passage to illuminate the inner chamber. The effect is breathtaking, and it did not happen by chance. Someone calculated the exact angle of the sun's lowest rising point and built the structure around it. Or look at the vast stone circles of Rujim El Hiri and the Golan Heights. At first glance, they seem like piles of scattered rocks. But from above, their design reveals careful geometry and, more importantly, alignment with the sunrise on the summer solstice. This means the builders not only understood solar movement, but also were capable of translating that knowledge into large-scale architectural design. Across the ocean in North America, the Serpent Mound of Ohio also aligns with solstices and lunar cycles. Its curves match the moon's major standstill, a cycle that takes 18.6 years to observe. Imagine the dedication required. Generations of observers watching the sky, recording its rhythms, and embedding those rhythms into earth and stone. These alignments suggest that many ancient cultures saw the sky not merely as background scenery, but as an essential part of spiritual life, agricultural timing, ritual cycles, and perhaps even identity. They observed patterns, learned from them, and immortalized them in their monuments. What is remarkable is that these astronomical designs appear all over the world, in places separated by oceans and thousands of miles, yet the underlying knowledge is strikingly similar. This raises a profound question. How did so many ancient societies, with no known communication between them, develop such precise and consistent understanding of the heavens? Where written records fail, stories often step in to fill the silence. And around the world, the stories that surround these megalithic sites share a strangely consistent theme. The builders were not ordinary people. They were taller, stronger, wiser, or somehow more capable than any known group that came after. Different cultures describe them in different ways: giants, sky beings, ancient teachers, or a vanished race endowed with extraordinary skills, but the underlying idea echoes everywhere. In the high Andes of Peru, elders speak of beings with exceptional strength who could shape stones as easily as clay. They say these ancestors could lift massive blocks or soften the stone to fit it perfectly. Whether literal or symbolic, the legend captures a truth. The craftsmanship is so advanced that later communities could not explain it through their own abilities. In Japan, tales describe heavenly beings who descended to shape mysterious granite monuments before returning to the skies. The stories are old, passed quietly from generation to generation, blending myth with history in a way that suggests admiration for the builders, along with a sense of distance from them. Across the Middle East, local traditions surrounding Baalbek speak of ancient heroes or giant figures responsible for moving 1,000-ton stones. While historians interpret these as symbolic exaggerations, the fact remains that even modern researchers struggle to replicate such tasks with simple tools. The legends arise because communities needed some explanation for works that seemed beyond human reach. Indigenous groups in North America also share stories of an ancient people who knew the sky, built enormous earthworks, and then disappeared long before the ancestors of modern tribes settled the region. These ancient ones are often described as peaceful builders who observed celestial cycles and taught early knowledge to those who came after. Even in the remote islands of the Pacific, the creation of massive statues is attributed to ancestors with unique abilities or spiritual power, a way of acknowledging that something extraordinary once happened that current generations cannot easily explain. What is fascinating is not the supernatural interpretations themselves, but their consistency. Cultures separated by oceans, languages, and millennia all describe earlier people with advanced knowledge who later vanished. Whether these stories reflect real memory, symbolic respect, or cultural tradition, they share a core message. The builders of these megaliths were different, and their knowledge did not survive intact. If the legends of advanced ancestors are intriguing, the stories that follow them are even more striking. Across nearly every region of the world, cultures separated by oceans, deserts, and thousands of years all preserve memories of a massive flood, a sudden, overwhelming event that reshaped the land and erased entire communities. These are not gentle tales of rising water. They are dramatic accounts. Raging seas, collapsing coastlines, storms that lasted for days, and societies swept away so completely that only fragments of their memory survived. What makes these stories exceptional is how similar they are, even when the cultures had no contact with one another. In the ancient Near East, the Epic of Gilgamesh describes a devastating deluge sent to cleanse the world. The survivor builds a vessel, saves life, and watches the waters recede to reveal a transformed landscape. Thousands of miles away, indigenous Australian communities tell of coastlines swallowed by the ocean, stories so ancient they correlate with geological maps showing where the shoreline used to be more than 10,000 years ago. In East Asia, Chinese legends speak of great floods that reshaped the land and forced early communities to begin anew. The story of King Yu, for example, centers on the monumental effort to control rising waters that threatened to wipe out entire settlements. Among the First Nations of North America, oral traditions describe a world covered by water, where survivors escaped to mountaintops or floating logs until the land reappeared. Some tribes even recall ancient cities lost beneath lakes or seas, echoes of landscapes that may have been drowned by sudden climate shifts. And in the Pacific, island cultures remember waves so large that they carried entire villages away. These accounts are not mere metaphors. Modern geological evidence shows that during the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose rapidly, more than 120 meters in some regions, and in some cases, the rise happened in sudden bursts that would have appeared catastrophic to anyone living through them. When legends from so many different cultures all describe massive water events, it is difficult not to wonder whether they are preserving memories of real, ancient catastrophes. If entire regions were submerged, it would explain why certain megalithic sites sit underwater today and why their builders disappeared without leaving detailed records. These global flood traditions may not provide every answer, but they point toward a shared human memory of upheaval, loss, and renewal. A memory written not on paper, but in story, stone, and silence. If global flood traditions hint at a catastrophic past, the physical evidence found across ancient sites makes the story even more compelling. Around the world, some of the most mysterious megalithic structures show signs of water damage, sudden abandonment, or complete submersion, as if they once stood proudly on dry land before being overtaken by rising seas or powerful floods. Take the underwater ruins near the island of Arwad, off the coast of Syria. Divers exploring the shallow Mediterranean waters discovered a massive megalithic wall made of tightly fitted limestone blocks. These stones were clearly shaped and transported by skilled builders yet today. The entire structure rests beneath several meters of seawater. Its position suggests dramatic sea level rise after its construction, possibly linked to ancient climatic shifts. In Japan, certain megalithic formations show rounded edges, erosion patterns, and water staining at levels that imply long-term exposure to heavy rainfall or even partial flooding. While some of this could be natural, The uniformity of the erosion hints at an event more sudden and powerful than slow weathering alone. In Egypt's ancient Osirion near Abydos, water fills the subterranean chamber year-round. Researchers note that the stone's surfaces show patterns resembling water erosion, suggesting the structure may have once been exposed to a drastically different climate, potentially far more humid or flood-prone than the desert conditions that surround it today. Across the Indian coastline, underwater surveys near Dwarka reveal stone structures arranged in straight lines and right angles, features unlikely to form naturally. These formations lie beneath more than 30 meters of water, indicating that when they were built, the shoreline stretched much farther out. Even inland sites like Silistani in Peru have foundations and lower stones bearing signs of water exposure, despite being located in high-altitude environments today. Geological studies reveal ancient shifts in lake levels, hinting that flooding once transformed the region's landscape. What all these sites share is the unmistakable imprint of water, not gentle erosion over millennia, but dramatic changes that altered coastlines, submerged cities, and forced communities to abandon their monumental works. And while each site tells its own story, together they paint a bigger picture. A period in ancient history when environmental forces reshaped entire regions, leaving behind stone structures as the only surviving witnesses. If civilizations existed along coastlines that are now underwater, their stories may remain hidden beneath the waves, waiting for future explorers to uncover. As we travel from one ancient site to another pattern begins to emerge, one that is far more subtle, yet potentially far more revealing. It appears not in the size of the stones or the engineering of the structures, but in the symbols carved into them. Symbols separated by thousands of miles, countless cultures, and entire oceans, yet unmistakably similar. Take the handbag symbol found at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a small rectangular shape with a curved handle engraved in the hands of stylized figures. This same motif appears in ancient Mesopotamian art, Mesoamerican carvings, and even among Pacific Island traditions. These cultures had no known contact with each other, yet they shared an image with strikingly consistent form. Spirals and concentric circles appear repeatedly as well. You can find them carved into the stones of Newgrange in Ireland, etched into the megaliths of Spain, engraved on the rocks of the American Southwest, and inscribed on artifacts from the Andes. These shapes may represent celestial cycles, the flow of time, or spiritual concepts, but their widespread presence suggests a shared interpretation of the natural world. Animal motifs also echo across continents. At Göbekli Tepe, foxes, birds, snakes, and big cats appear prominently. In South America, ancient sites display similar creatures with comparable stylistic forms. Even in faraway Pacific islands, symbolic animals hold similar roles as guardians, messengers, or cosmic intermediaries. What does this mean? One interpretation is that human beings everywhere naturally gravitated towards similar symbols. Another possibility is cultural diffusion, ideas passed slowly through trade routes, migrations, or shared ancestry. And then there is the more daring idea that these symbols come from an even older source, a symbolic language or worldview inherited by later civilizations after a lost era of cultural connection. These recurring symbols are not simple decorations. They often appear in sacred or ceremonial spaces, carved deliberately into key areas, entrance stones, central pillars, or inner chambers. This suggests that the builders placed deep meaning in these images. They were not embellishing stone. They were communicating ideas. Even if we can't decode every pattern or symbol, the global consistency forces us to reconsider the notion that early cultures were isolated. Something, whether shared memory, shared teachings, or shared human experience connected their visions of the world. And while we may never know the full meaning behind these carvings, their presence across continents hints at a deeper story about humanity's early symbolic language, a story that might stretch back much further than we once believed. One of the most haunting threads woven through these ancient sites is not just how impressive the structures are, but how suddenly the knowledge behind them seems to vanish. All across the world, we see evidence of cultures reaching remarkable levels of architectural and astronomical sophistication, only for their building traditions to stop abruptly, without a clear explanation. Consider Easter Island. The people of Rapa Nui carved nearly 900 massive statues, transported them over rough terrain, and raised them on ceremonial platforms. This required not only engineering skill, but social organization, planning, and cultural purpose. Yet at some point, the statue building stops. Many figures remain unfinished in the quarry, as if the workers walked away mid-tool stroke. The society that produced these masterpieces shifted dramatically, leaving behind questions instead of answers. Or look at Silistani in Peru. Towering cylindrical burial structures crafted with astonishing precision stand in isolation on windswept plains. Their creators had mastered a level of stonework so advanced that even centuries of weathering have not broken their perfect lines. And then, nothing. The technique disappears. Later cultures in the same region built differently, suggesting the knowledge was not passed down or preserved. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe is another example. A monumental complex built with careful design and incredible artistry was deliberately buried by the people who used it. The reasons remain unknown. Was it a ritual closure? A response to environmental change? A protective act before migration? Whatever the motivation, the burial preserved the site but not the knowledge. In China's Longyou Caves, massive underground chambers carved with uniform patterns show immense effort and coordination. Yet no dynasty, no text, no inscription ever mentions their construction. The knowledge that produced them did not carry forward into later Chinese architectural practices. This pattern repeats globally. Advanced techniques appear suddenly, flourish for a period, and then disappear, just as suddenly. No gradual decline, no intermediary styles, just silence. What causes this kind of loss? Environmental change, migration, cultural shifts, internal conflict, a combination of forces, or perhaps catastrophic events that destroyed settlements, erased traditions, and forced survivors to rebuild with whatever knowledge remained. The stones endure, but the hands and minds that shaped them vanish from the record. And in that silence, we are left with some of humanity's greatest unanswered questions. When we step back and look at all the patterns, the engineering precision, the global flood stories, the mysterious symbols, the sudden collapse of ancient techniques, and the submerged structures, a larger possibility begins to take shape. It is a hypothesis that is not proven, but it is compelling enough to spark global curiosity. Could all these clues point toward an advanced civilization that existed before a major flood, or environmental upheaval? To be clear, this idea does not require imagining anything supernatural. It simply suggests that long before the cultures we typically study, there may have been earlier societies that developed impressive knowledge, architectural, astronomical, artistic, and then lost that knowledge during a period of extreme climate change. Scientists know that at the end of the last ice age, between roughly 12,000 and 8,000 years ago, global sea levels rose by more than 120 meters. Entire coastlines disappeared. Rivers changed course. Vast regions that were once habitable became submerged. For ancient communities living near the oceans, which were ideal for food, trade, and settlement, these events would have been catastrophic. If any early cultures with advanced building traditions lived along those ancient shorelines, much of their architecture would now be underwater, beyond easy discovery. And that is exactly what we see. Underwater ruins in the Mediterranean, off India's coast, near Japan, and likely many more waiting to be uncovered. This theory does not claim that a single global civilization ruled the planet. Instead, it suggests that multiple coastal cultures may have developed impressive knowledge, exchanged ideas, and built enduring monuments only to be fragmented or erased by dramatic environmental changes. The survivors would have carried fragments of that knowledge inland, mixing it with emerging local traditions. This could explain why advanced stoneworking appears suddenly in places like Peru, why ancient astronomical understanding seems far older than expected, and why global myths share the same themes of destruction, renewal, and lost wisdom. The truth may be simple. Humanity's story did not start where we think it did. It may stretch deeper into the past, with chapters lost to rising seas and shifting climates. The stones that remain perched on hillsides, buried in deserts, submerged beneath the ocean are not just ruins. They may be the last echoes of civilizations that faced enormous challenges, and whose greatest achievements still whisper through time. As we reach the end of this journey, one thing becomes clear. The world is filled with ancient mysteries that refuse to fit neatly into our modern timelines. From Peru's towering stone walls to Turkey's buried temples, from Japan's enigmatic monoliths to China's subterranean chambers, each site tells a story not just of architectural brilliance, but of human resilience, creativity, and the deep desire to leave a mark on the world. Whether these ancient builders were responding to climatic change, cultural transformation, or events now lost to memory, their monuments remain as the last enduring clues to civilizations that shaped their world with extraordinary vision. And while we may never know every detail, exploring these ancient sites reminds us that history is not fixed. It is alive, shifting, and expanding with every new discovery. Flood myths, submerged ruins, precise astronomical alignments, vanished. Techniques together, they paint a picture of humanity's long, complex story, a story far older and richer than our textbooks often acknowledge. And maybe the greatest lesson is this: we are not the first humans to confront a changing world and strive to build something that lasts. The past is full of people who adapted, innovated, and persevered, leaving behind echoes in stone that still speak to us today. Thank you so much for joining this exploration. Your curiosity is what keeps these ancient mysteries alive, and every new question you ask helps push the conversation forward. If you enjoyed this journey, feel free to like the video, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay open-minded, and I will see you in the next story.